Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to make a note that we do have a quorum present this evening. Any agenda additions or deletions, amendments?
Yes. Hold on, let me pull it up 1 second. I'd like to move the approval of resolution R-20-20 to a future council meeting under the consent agenda. So I'd like to make a motion to move that to a later meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
So moved. Okay. As we move through, we are not going to do any of the presentations as we don't have anyone present here. So we've mailed that proclamation out, and we will be handling the appointments and the reappointments and those things at a later time. At this point, I'd like to say a couple of words. And first and foremost, good evening from your city council. Often in our roles as public servants, we have the opportunity to meet many people who have experienced some of the worst life can offer. One desire I have found in many of them is that regardless of what life may bring, they have hope that their government will always provide quality services that are always citizen-centric and in the best interests of our stakeholders in our community. Today, we host a city council meeting while our planet faces a new threat that has come to disrupt our normality of life. Similar to us tonight, in communities throughout our nation and world, leaders and tribal stakeholders meet, plan, and prepare to ensure their communities are resilient and vibrant as we face the unknowns of the global pandemic. Just like those leaders, we have some concerns and many questions. Despite our differences towards each other, we must remain good stewards and continue the good fight of protecting and preserving our city. I believe that we are stronger as one Bowie, undivided by our differences and beliefs. I pray in the days to come that our faith and encouragement and strength to last beyond our present circumstances. I have found solace in the fact that during the most difficult events in life, we draw closer to one another and we survive together. Bowie, our best days are still ahead of us, and we will make this together. Having said that, any other comments from any of the city council members?
I just wanted to point out that Councilmember Boafo is not present tonight, just taking health precautions as he is experiencing a slight sore throat. So I just want to point that out.
Thank you.
Our prayers are with him.
All right, so we move through the old business.
Excuse me, Mayor. We, under citizen participation, we did receive a text-in comment from a resident, so I would just need to read it for the record real quick.
Would you please? Thank you.
Citizen participation. Good evening, Mayor Adams and council members. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Millie Hall, Bowie District 3. On March 2nd, 2020, regular city council meeting, I spoke under citizen participation about new business C, recognition of former Mayor G. Frederick Robinson. Councilmember Gardner was to present, which was moved from item C to A on the agenda that night. I stated that the state of Maryland has an open meetings law. Agendas must be presented to the public before the council meetings. All other new business and old business items had hyperlinks explaining the items, but not item C under new business. It's not fair to the people that we are not aware of Councilmember Garden's plans. I am not saying former Mayor Robinson's name should not go on something. Remember, you all are working on the people's behalf. I am recommending his name go on that beautiful Centennial Park at City Hall. In that way, you wouldn't need to change the deed, business cards, letterhead, mailing, organizations, and etc. I feel the citizens have the right to know your total cost for all has to be done. Thank you. And that's the only comment received for this evening.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving to new business. The traffic calming devices. Yes.
City Manager's report, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, please go right ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to talk to the City Council and those who are watching on television about the efforts of our staff with regard to the coronavirus, COVID-19. As of today, I'd like to discuss a summary that we put out. The council should have it at their tables. The number of cases in Prince George's County so far is 10, and the number of confirmed cases in Maryland is 37. As you may be aware, the governor issued new orders today that are more stringent orders regarding gatherings in businesses and establishments. Restaurants, bars, gyms, and movie theaters are closed after 5 p.m. today, except for pickup and delivery. And gatherings of any kind of more than 50 people are banned. After receiving this directive from the governor, the city has closed all of its buildings to the public since we would be in excess of the 50 number. City services will continue with modifications for social distancing. All of the people who can telework for the city are programmed into a telework program. That's about 41 employees of the 400 plus that we have. The remainder are delivering services and simply must be present. In keeping with Governor Hogan's orders and the directives we received from the Prince George's County Emergency Management Operation and their health, we've taken the following steps. I said that we closed all of our offices to the public effective today. If somebody has business in an office, they can make a phone call there, and there will be a discussion will determine whether a face-to-face meeting is necessary. People are still able to pay their bills using online or on telephone. The senior center is closed and has been closed since last Friday. The gym is closed also. The ice arena is closed. Ken Hill, like the city government here, is closed to the public. Ken Hill Bowie Studio is closed, and the historic properties are also closed. As far as the police department, it's still functioning since it's a frontline service. However, public access has been limited, and I think the chief explained that in his chief chat. Our effort there are to protect our call takers and our dispatchers, since we have no replacement for them, and also we simply have to keep them safe, more so than anything else. Our trash and other public works collections are continuing services. The Public Works Director and his team are managing to keep those valuable employees healthy and safe from contamination as possible. Also significant, we have a senior transportation still being provided. Non-essential trips have been canceled. However, there are essential trips such as medical appointments and other essential items like that are still ongoing. The senior meals nutrition program is still functioning. As you might recall, when the senior center is operating, the county provides food for the seniors to eat at the locations, and then food is delivered to those who are sick and shut in. So those who are sick and shut in are still receiving their meals through our transportation. I mentioned the Bowie Police Department earlier, and of course, this meeting is closed to the public. We are, as you may be aware, our Emergency Operations Center is is in partial activation, effective this morning from 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m., and that gives us a focal point for all emergency actions, requests for services, requests for supplies, and gives us a center. We are conducting at least one conference call with all critical department directors each day, led by our emergency management director, and of course we're providing these updates. We have members from each critical section of the organization participating in the Emergency Operations Center, including community services, communications, PD, and everybody. So I just wanted to physically go through that so that you and all the people in Bowie will know all the steps that are being taken by staff to keep us going here. One thing I would like to say is that the WSSC, as the governor put out an order that public utilities are prohibited from charging late fees and shutting off services. Well, we instituted that last week, so we were ahead of the governor on that particular instance. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you to the city staff for putting that together. You guys have been working really hard and really diligently. And as our city manager, Alfred Lott, mentioned, it was good to see that we were above the curve and making sure that residents had the necessary water to make sure that they could stay safe during unrest time. So thank you to our city staff for preparing that and getting that together.
Thank you.
Councilwoman.
Thank you. I'd like to echo Roxy's sentiments. Also wanted to find out, are we getting any requests for any special assistance that we should be aware of?
I don't think we've gotten any so far. No, ma'am.
Okay, thanks.
But we are prepared to react if that should arise.
Yeah. Any other questions or anything? Thank you. And again, thank you to the staff. Moving on now to the old business to the new business and the traffic calming device criteria. Staff.
Good evening, Council. Some time ago, council members requested staff recommend changes to the city's policy for neighborhood traffic management. I have provided a draft document with recommended changes. Council was provided a copy of the draft in the meeting package. The draft includes comments in the right margin that explain each change recommended. I'll provide a brief now explaining the recommended changes. Prior to your hearing on the issue, should council seek additional or other changes, we'll implement those and provide a resolution for adoption of the updated policy at a future meeting. In 2008, Council substantially adopted the Prince George's County policy, and that's the policy that's in use now and has been since 2008. The current policy provides a very good process for traffic calming requests, evaluation, and response. There are, however, some opportunities to improve the policy with minor changes. First, to respond to the specific request from some council members that the policy include a process for the council to consider exceptions for requests that would otherwise fail to meet the minimum criteria for traffic calming measures. Second, to eliminate a few ambiguities that exist in the current written policy. Third, to improve the objectivity of some of the criteria. And then there's a couple of minor changes that I would like to recommend since there's an opportunity to update the policy. Before I explain the recommended changes, I just want to briefly review the current process. As you see on this slide, it starts with a request that is submitted from an HOA. However, for areas that do not have an HOA, from the responsible council member. The Department of Public Works then conducts a study in which counts of speeds and volume are taken. We examine several other criteria that are spelled out in the policy. If the street meets the criteria, it's a point system. If it meets the criteria for installation of any physical traffic calming measures like speed humps, the Public Works Department will recommend installation of calming measures in a community meeting. The community then must petition affected street residents to verify support, and assuming support, the installation is completed when funding is available. If the street does not qualify, there is a process to still obtain traffic calming measures. As shown here, it says streets not meeting the required criteria can still obtain the NTMP device if 90% of the homeowners on the affected street and 60% on all side streets agree in writing to the NTMP device. That requirement is very, very difficult to meet, so it's never been done. So now on to the recommended changes. The first deals with the request to have an exception process for the council. So what I thought about was that it would seem appropriate that council, receive a request and schedule a hearing so that they may hear views from the community prior to making a decision to make an exception. So the language I added to the policy reads, hearing and, when after completion of an NTMP study, a street is not qualified either due to a lack of required points from the evaluation or due to a lack of support from affected residents, City Council may, after hearing, decide to install traffic calming measures based on a majority vote. 30 days prior to scheduling a hearing, the council will advise the city manager so that the presentation of recommended traffic calming measures may be prepared. Because if the street had not qualified, we would not have prepared a recommendation for measures. So we need some time to prepare some recommended measures and brief those to you. I mentioned that I would like to remove some ambiguities in the policy. The first has to do with the road classifications. The policy, as I said, was adopted from Prince George's County. The road classifications they use differ than the road classifications in the city code, and that has caused some disagreement about what roads are qualified, what roads have to have a certain volume, etc. So I just wanted to fix that and make it match the city code. The required community approval has also caused confusion in the past, and I'm recommending that language be updated to state that required approval is defined as 60% of the total residents, both on the street to receive traffic calming, plus any additional households located such that they must drive through the traffic calming device to reach the home. So that would mean, for example, a cul-de-sac off of the main street that has a traffic calming device on it. Those cul-de-sac members would also be included in the petition to see if they're in favor of the calming devices. And finally, just some language to explain that the funding situation, typically we have to seek capital funds, so the timing on when we can install the humps, has to kind of match the budget, and that's just to ensure that, to manage expectations from the community. Two recommended changes associated with the objectivity of the criteria. There's a criteria on sight distance. This means if the road has a sharp turn and you can't see far enough to stop, to avoid hitting somebody in front of you because of the sight distance. But the criteria currently does not have any specificity to that. So I've added the specificity that would explain exactly what that means. And then finally, there's a criteria for cut-through traffic. And that criteria is very, very subjective. So the idea is that a road that receives the majority of its traffic is cut through, as opposed to people who would use that road naturally to get from home to work, etc. That road would receive some additional points. The two problems with that is, first of all, to receive the majority of the traffic to be cut through traffic, I can't think of a street in Bowie that would ever meet that criteria. And secondly, the idea, how you determine what's a cut through traffic versus a non-cut through traffic is sort of can't be defined. So my suggestion is to eliminate that criteria altogether and instead add increase the number of points that can be assigned to volume, because this is sort of related to volume. So if we have a high volume, right now we cap the points at 30 points for that, we would move that up to 35. And then I mentioned that there was a couple minor changes I would like to make. One is the initial request from non-HOA areas. We looked at policies in other communities, and some of them had a required minimum support prior to even initiating a study. So I'm suggesting we might want to add that, and the suggested languages for non-HOA areas, that at least 10 households would need to be in support of a study prior to it being initiated. And that sort of makes it a little more similar to an HOA area, where before an HOA area sends us a request, they talk about it in their HOA meetings, and then we get the request. And then the last change is a minor change about the speed hump profiles. The language is very Prince George's County standard oriented. We don't necessarily use the Prince George's County standard for every speed hump. They only use what we call speed tables, which are very long. We have found that shorter humps are serve very well in some streets. So we just changed that language to give us the flexibility to use the shorter hump. That concludes my briefing on the matter. So as I said, I'm not sure about the hearing, but if you have suggestions for us to change the thing, we would change it and bring back a resolution to adopt the changes in the future.
Mr. Mayor, the purpose of this briefing was to present some changes, possible changes to the traffic management program. And Councilmember Estep requested we do this, and so we're open to any suggestions and that you might have regarding this matter.
We together, I guess.
I couldn't hear you, the last part of what you said, City.
Well, it was when the council members asked us to bring this forward so we could take a look at it. In the process, George looked at the policy to see if there were things that we outdated. He mentioned in a couple of cases there were things that were ambiguous and that could be adjusted. One of the circumstances that exist with this policy, we often get requests for traffic analysis that result in no action because our standards are really high. And so there may be a need, maybe the council wants to either adjust those standards or add a criteria where there's some sort of appeal at your level.
Do we have to have is there a public comment after this?
At this point, is this where we would normally do public comments?
Yes.
Do we have any?
At this point, we do not.
Okay, with that, is this where we conclude? Since there are no speakers signed up to speak, I declare the public hearing to have been held. Okay. Now, Councilman Stett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know you have a lot on your plate, Mr. Stefanos, so I'm really grateful that you took the time to bring this to us, and I really appreciate the suggested changes. We get residents who've been coming to us and to you for the last several years saying we really want a traffic change, but they can't get that 90% threshold met, and so I think this is a really fair change that'll keep a lot of residents happy. And I definitely support us formally adopting the recommended changes so that we can implement this policy, and I really appreciate your work on this.
Councilman DeFore?
Thank you, and I too, having been actively engaged in this, really feel the interest of the community in addressing our traffic problems, and I think this is something that goes in the right direction. So I greatly appreciate the work on this. A couple of comments. The first is I'm grateful that we're making changes to adapt this to our community, because I feel that as the local government closest to the people, we have the greatest ability to determine what folks are really looking for. And so to the extent that it is adapted from other either county or national standards to meet our needs, all the better. So thank you for your efforts on that. The first comment I wanted to make and pose as a addendum or an additional change. We go through a lot determining what it is we would like to, go through a lot of effort to determine that we want to put these devices in. Can we also add something for removal of devices? Not that I'm looking to remove devices, but I don't want us to be in kind of that bureaucratic cycle where you say, well, I know how to add them, but at the end of the day, if I find out that they're ineffective, they have too many, negative side effects in the community, after some period of time or some process, can have a voice on that.
Certainly, we could add a paragraph in there about that. And I like your statement about some period of time. So I think it would be appropriate to put a moratorium on removel.
Yes, because it's expensive.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And plus, people may get used to it and change, and that when it first goes up, they don't like it, and then they like it, So maybe like a 3-year moratorium or something, and then some sort of similar process. I think maybe even to bring to council, maybe the similar process is the exception, as a council hearing, hear both sides, the opinion, and then council directs removal,
That sounds fine. I mean, I'll leave it to your good offices to figure out the nitty-gritty, but it may even be the same process in reverse, which is to say, we have them, and I got 60% of the population on that street that wants it. I don't know. Think about it.
Yep, sir.
You don't want them pulled or what have you.
Yep.
The other comment I have is on the number we had for, I believe you said 10 household minimum
To start
things. There may be some streets that don't qualify. I'm thinking.
Yes.
I'm thinking of Trainer, as a matter of fact.
It was 50%. Yeah, so the language read, the lesser of 10 residents or 50% of the street.
All right. Well, that takes care of that problem. Thank you. And I think that's it. I do want to comment. I know that this is something that's near and dear to a lot of people's hearts, and so we will, I'm sure, have an opportunity for people to come in and speak at some point down the road when we further consider this or actually move to some form of action on it, because I do know that there are a lot of people both mostly in favor, but there may be some that oppose it as well. I want to make sure people have the opportunity to come in. So I appreciate your time on this, and it's certainly not the last time we'll be chatting about it. Thank you.
And I apologize, I got credit for this earlier, but Duford deserves at least 50% credit because his constituents have been louder probably than, anyway, just want to get that on the record.
We've had many conversations about traffic calming.
One brief question in general, and that is, as we move forward, as we do our development and as traffic flows change and those things, what's the process that we go back and revisit, and how often, whether or not it's a major drive, it's a collector street, or how often and how do we go about that?
I'm not sure. Can you say the question again? Did you?
The question is, in terms of establishing the definitions of a major arterial or a collector street, how often are those definitions revisited?
Never. They aren't revisited. They're sort of Collector Road has a definition, and that is, that's the kind of road that doesn't have residential driveways on it, and that it connects to major streets. So actually, the definition in the city code, there are so few of them, the way the city defined them is by name. So it's quite clear in the city code which ones are collectors. We don't have arterial streets in the city infrastructure. And then the major drives, and they have been in existence, as far as I know, for as long as the city code's been there, but I'm not 100% sure about that, but, as long as I've been here at least.
Okay, thank you. Right. Any other questions, anyone? Thank you so very much. I think I'd like at this point, I think we've concluded all of the current business. I would like to say to the citizens of Bowie, we have a great staff, we have a great council, our first responders. All of us are really making sure to do the best to keep our citizens safe. I think from what you heard with the city manager's report and all you've done, that all things that can be done to help protect you and keep you safe are there. We ask that you reach out to each other. One of the things we talk about in this time is it gives us a chance now to talk more. So for those who are elderly and those who cannot get out as much, and as we all are trying to maintain that social distancing, make sure you reach out to family and friends and just give them a call. Make sure your elderly neighbors, you give them a call and check in with them. Because as we all know and we all agree, we're one city, we're one Bowie, and we're blessed to have each other, and we're blessed to be citizens of Bowie. So thank you so very much. Motion?
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn to closed session under the statutory authority of the Maryland Annotated Code, State Government Article 305B1, to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction, any other personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals, and Section 3-305B7, to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice.
Seconded.
Moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you, everyone.